guys, it's Chloe, and in today's video I'm going to be talking a little bit about how we became Farmer's Daughter Coffee Company. So a lot of people ask questions about where we got our name from and how we came up with the design and the vibe for the building. I'm going to be answering some of those questions about how we became what we are today. So the name actually came a little bit before we even knew that we were going to open a coffee shop. So when I was in college, I was working at a coffee shop and I had a little home espresso machine. I started taking it to events and setting up a coffee bar to make drinks for people. And at first that was just a hobby and I was doing it completely for free because I thought it was fun. But over time, people started hiring me for events. I started to make some money off of it. And at that point, I decided I probably need some branding so that this might become a legit thing. So I came up with the name Farmer's Daughter Coffee Bar at the time. The name Farmer's Daughter is really simple. It just came from the fact that we had some land and we had some goats, cows, chickens, that sort of stuff. And so my dad was the farmer and I'm the farmer's daughter. We decided we were going to open an actual coffee shop. I actually had a list of other names that I really liked, but we ended up going to Google and doing some searches, and we found other businesses with some of the other names that I liked. And we wanted to make sure that when you search for our coffee shop that you can only find us, you're not going to find other places. And at first I kind of assumed that we would just be coffee house or coffee shop. But because we're roasting, we wanted to give the idea that we are more than just a coffee house, and that's where Coffee Company came from. So the next step after we picked our name was to register with the state, get all of our permits and licenses, and luckily for me, Mom did all of that stuff because I would have had no idea where to begin. And after we got all of that stuff settled, it was time for us to find a location. Where we live is in a really rural area. It did not have a high enough concentration of people that we really felt like we would be able to make a business last. So we pretty well knew that we wanted the Flatwoods, Russell area. That was where our focus was whenever we decided to look for coffee shops. We tried a few different locations, and there was one building that we thought about buying. We found that without having previous revenue, it's really hard to get a business loan of that size. We continued to look at different places, and that's when we found this. The owners of this building are very, very nice. We rent from them. They were very helpful with turning this building into what we needed. This building used to be an old auto parts store, so as you can imagine, it was not set up to be a coffee shop. We had to cut out a drive-through window. We had to add plumbing. All of those things are very expensive. And it was a lot of work, but I couldn't be happier that we chose this building. I'm very, very happy with it. I hope that this is where we stay forever. Because this was an old auto parts store, we pretty much had a blank slate to make it however we wanted. And that was a good and a bad thing. It was a bad thing in the sense that we had to start from scratch with plumbing and all of those expensive things to turn it into what we needed. But it was a good thing in that we could design it however we wanted. And a lot of people have asked me about the vibe that we've chosen. People have even asked me how it fits in with the theme of Farmer's Daughter, because you might expect something a little more rustic or farmy, and it's pretty hippie and colorful and all of that stuff, and so you're like, how do those things fit in? The answer really is just that I am the farmer's daughter and it's my style. And everything that I did with designing the coffee shop, even picking out the espresso machine and all of those things, I just asked myself, what would my dream coffee shop have? And then that's where I went with it. And so I've always loved color, I've loved flowers, I've loved peace signs and all of that sort of stuff. And so I just designed it exactly how I wanted it. I'm sure there are some people that wish that I might have gone a little more gender neutral or at least a little bit less pink. But personally, I think if you're a guy, I think there's no shame in drinking a coffee out of a cup with a pink lid. In fact, we have a guy that comes through and he gets like 2 shots of espresso every day. And actually, over time, we ended up buying some little like 4-ounce cups, and they're pink. And those are pretty much solely used for him for his espresso shots every day. And I think he loves them. This is our bug. Her name is Meg, and it actually came from Meg Giry from Phantom of the Opera. We put her out here because it fits with the groovy vibe that we're going for, and we also wanted something close to the road that people would see, kind of a landmark to make people look over at us and wonder what's going on over here. So since I worked in a coffee shop before we opened our business, I was able to bring the barista knowledge and kind of know how the flow of a coffee shop should run. But Mom and Dad roasted their own coffee beans for about 7 years before we opened. So they're the big reason that we decided to roast our own beans. So I'm going to let Mom tell you guys a little bit about that.
We've always been big coffee drinkers. Probably 7 years or so before we opened, we had some guests come in from out of town, and of course we were talking coffee, and they told us that they roasted their own beans at home. And Lucas and I kind of looked at each other and we were like, why haven't we been doing this? So we kind of talked to him a little bit about where they get their beans from, where they order the green beans from, and kind of some of the equipment they used, origins that they had tried. We just kind of jumped in. We didn't want to start out with expensive equipment or anything, so we got a popcorn pan. So like, the kind that's like sits on the stove and it has the crank where you like rotate the kernels while it's popping. We started out with that. We bought several different origins. I think one of the first ones we tried was Guatemalan, or Kenyan. We were just instantly hooked. It was kind of a pain to roast, like stand it, because it takes a while, and you had to stand and like constantly rotate the beans. Eventually, Lucas, he took the crank off the top and attached something to it so that we could just stand there with a drill and hold it while it was roasting, and that just kept the thing spinning. Eventually, we got like an air popper. We used that for a little bit. Lucas mostly did that. I didn't really know how to use it. After we had done that for probably 5 or 6 years, we eventually bought like a real coffee roaster, not anything like commercial. It would just do like a pound or so at a time, but it almost looks like a little crock pot. And you put your beans in it, and it just like constantly stirs them as you're roasting. It was like $100 or so. We got that on Amazon, and it was kind of a life changer because it made the roasting so much easier.
So you talked about trying different origins of coffee, and I know, of course, that we decided on Kenyan as the best, but how did you decide that that was your favorite, and how long did it take you to figure out that that was the best coffee?
I think I said that maybe we tried Guatemalan first. I know Guatemalan and Kenyan were two of the first that we tried, and I just really loved the Kenyan. It was a little bit more expensive than the other origins, and so we kind of like tried different ones, but the Kenyan just had a taste that really we never could get from the other beans. And so, again, we tried different things, but the Kenyan is just always what we came back to. There's a coffee shop that when we go to the beach for vacation, there's a coffee shop that we love to go to, and we always say like they have the best coffee we've ever had. Like to mimic that roast or that taste, it took a Kenyan bean. I'm not really sure exactly what it is that they use, but that's we roast it to like a medium roast. It has kind of a fruity flavor. If you roast it dark, it kind of goes away, but roasting it to a medium roast, you kind of keep some of that. Always what we came back to is our favorite and the closest taste that we could get to, the coffee shop that we like to visit.
So when we did decide to open a coffee shop, I know we decided pretty quickly to roast our own beans, but was it an automatic decision for you that you wanted to roast?
It was pretty fast, like you said. Starting a coffee shop and everything that goes into it is overwhelming. Our initial thought was that we would source our beans from another roaster. We reached out to multiple roasters. We reached out to the coffee shop that I mentioned at the beach to see if they would like to, wholesale their beans. We had set up a meeting with a coffee roaster, several hours away to talk about sourcing our beans from there. But just the more we thought about it and how much we love our own roast that we roasted at home, we really wanted to bring that to Flatwoods and to our coffee shop. It was just cost comparison. Even buying a roaster, it was cheaper for us to roast our own beans. Really, there's nobody else around here that roasts their own beans. There are local roasters that provide beans for several local coffee shops, but I really don't know of anybody else around here that roasts their own. I think that really makes us unique, but also allows us to have more control over the taste of our coffee.
Yeah, and I feel like not only is it unique that we roast our own beans, but I've also really, in all of the coffee shops that I've tried, I've never seen anybody else use a Kenyan, let alone a Kenya AA or AB bean.
Mm-hmm.
And buying the beans unroasted is much cheaper, and it allows us to not only roast it ourselves and do it how we want, but we can also have a really high quality bean for a cheaper cost to us than it would be if we bought it roasted from somewhere else.
And to have a single origin, a lot of places still have a blend, so they may have a little bit of Kenyan in there with a little bit of Ethiopian with a little bit of Colombian, and they're really able to get a flavor that they want that way. But again, the flavor that we really like, we get from a single origin.
I know this video has been a lot of talking, so if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching and for caring about our story and supporting our business. Of course, as always, let me know what videos I should make next, because I am bound to run out of ideas. Thank you all for watching, and stay groovy.